Innovation is in our veins. Soon the whole world will know our names. Sharing our knowledge and freedom reign. We here for the people, you know it's our way. Setting foundations is part of the dream. It doesn't matter if you're new to the game. Listen up now, cause we all gon' say, elevate, 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 higher, elevate, 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 higher. We gon' rise up, we all gon' shine. Work through adversity, stay on the grind. Elevate, elevate, this is our time.
Welcome to the Elevate Podcast, everyone. It's so great to have you all on one more time. It's your boy Josh.
And Reg.
We love to have him again with us. We will be having Dalton back, but man, I'm coming off a hot weekend, dog. Holy jumping. My eyes are about half closed. People are listening on the podcast. This will be a shorter episode. I'm just going to tell you right off the bat. We were this close to canceling the shows this week because I am just dead.
You're wiped.
I'm done. I got hit with mad allergies while I was down in Boston. Those who don't know, when I'm a good podcast host, but I'm a better husband. And I took my wife down to Foxborough to see Taylor Swift, and literally left Friday. Got there early Saturday morning. Saturday show. Woke up, drove to northern New Hampshire to see her family, and then woke up at 6 a.m. to drive back here to make sure I was back here for the podcast. And that was my weekend.
That's dedication.
Woo! We're here for it. So we're going to give it all. We're going to be talking interest rates today. More rumors on the horizon that things are going to spike. We're going to have a lot of fun with that. So it will be a shorter episode, but we'll make sure it's action-packed.
Be juicy.
We love it. So please subscribe, like, do all the things. It's very much helpful. To those who don't know, we'll see. We do have like a membership-only episodes on Thursday. If you're interested in seeing that, you can check the show notes down below and be able to subscribe there. This is going to be a fun one, dude.
I'm like, man, I should have brought you a coffee. That's on me. I feel bad for that.
Dude, it was crazy the difference of pollination down there versus up here.
Yeah, but they're like 2 weeks ahead in their spring.
No kidding.
So
it wrecked me. It wrecked me, dude. I couldn't believe it. I was just like, as I started driving further up back to Nova Scotia, I started clearing up more and more. But I couldn't believe it, man. I was a mess. I thought I was getting sick, and then I was like, no, it was just straight up allergies.
Yeah. You know what wrecked me this weekend?
What?
The Blue Nose.
Oh, you did the Blue Nose? Let's go.
Not the full marathon. I'm not crazy.
Oh, you're a half marathoner.
Not even.
10K?
The 10K.
Let's go.
And it was too funny because like I was halfway through the 10K and I hit the 5K mark and I was like, this isn't bad. Like, of course, I hadn't moved out the couch in like 2 months, right?
Oh, yeah,
because I was like,
couch to 10K, baby.
Yeah, basically. And so, because I was like, I had forgot about it. And then my buddy Stu was like, hey, like that ticket is still there for you, the registration. And, you said that you were going to do it back in February. I was like, oh, I was in dad brain at that point in time. I said yes to something I didn't realize I was saying yes to. Because I'm not a runner at all, right? And so he's like, no, it's still good. Like, you don't have to do it. And I'm like, no, I'll do it with you. It's good. And I was like, how hard can it be? And I was like, I've got 3 weeks to train. Hit with pneumonia. Didn't leave the house for like 2 weeks straight. And then I'm like better for 3 days. And then bam, Blue Nose.
Gee.
So yeah.
Iron Man over here.
So like I said, kilometer 5, I was like, this is easy. This isn't too bad. Kilometer 6, I was like, this is the worst thing ever. Kilometer 7, my knee was like, nope.
Oh, shoot.
I'm like walking across the bridge. The wind is coming at you like 80 kilometers an hour. It was just nasty.
Brutal.
Like,
did you manage to like finish it, at least in walking form, or did you finish it as a run?
I finished it as a jog.
Good.
So
Dang, dude.
I was like, okay, we respectably did it. It was like an hour, I think, was my time. So it was like, wasn't amazing, but I was like, it's not the worst. So
True.
It's like, there's still tons of people behind me. I was like, okay, I'm faster than them. So
that's all that matters, dude. That's awesome.
So yeah,
good stuff. Well, here we are. I'm happy for you. Happy you made those successes, accomplishments.
Mm-hmm.
Excited for you, dude. You flipped the switch. Congratulations.
I did. Shout out, flip the switch.
Shout out, flip the switch. Awesome. Okay, cool. So before we jump right in headfirst into interest rate spikes, people don't want to come to Canada, dude. Permanent residency applications have dropped.
Yeah,
like over 12%. And here in this first article, it says Canada immigration applications dropped in first quarter of 2023. Applications to immigrate to Canada dropped in the first quarter of this year compared to the same period last year, possibly indicating a future fall in newcomers to the country. The latest data from Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada reveals immigration applications dropped 12% to only 73,358 in the first quarter of this year, compared to 83,691 for the same 3-month period in 2022. Even more dramatic is the 39.3% drop in the monthly average number of applications in the last quarter of last year, 40,312 compared to the only 24,453 in the first 3 months of this year.
I mean, it tells a story, but at the same time, I'm like not upset because I'm just like, I understand that they're looking at immigrants being like, okay, this is, you know, people we can add to the labor force, add to the tax pool. Like, this is something that's going to be beneficial. But I'm looking at it being like, we don't have houses for people. We don't have doctors for people. We just don't have enough to go around right now. Food is ridiculous. Like, I think there was a couple different things floating around TikTok and floating around Instagram that were actually just detailing how expensive Canada is. And that was like, that's international, right? And people are looking at that going, why would I come to Canada when it's so unaffordable? And, you know, I can go anywhere in the world, essentially. And I mean, even some anecdotal conversations I've had with some Ukraine refugees who were just like, we were sold on the idea that, you know, Canada was like this ivory tower of like asylum where everything would be cared for, and it's a struggle. And so I'm not surprised by that figure at all. And like I said, I'm also not upset by it because I'm just like, we need to get our house in order first before we start welcoming guests. Mm-hmm. So
totally.
But
yeah, I think what I thought was a figure that I found to be interesting, and this is where I find the Trudeau government intriguing on this, is we had like, I think our population somewhere around 65 million, something along those.
Yep.
And they had a plan to grow by 2030 to somewhere about 100 million was what they wanted to push to.
Our population isn't 65 million.
Is it not?
No, I thought our population was like almost 40.
Oh, let's check it.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I said yes, and then I thought about it for a second. I was like, no, that can't be right. Because it was 36 million only a couple of years ago.
Dude, you're right. 38.25 million. I don't know where I got 60 million from. There we go. It's that kind of day. And then could you type in Trudeau to push to 100 million population in Canada? This was something one of his ministers brought up. I can't remember. He gave it a fancy name and everything to market it.
Of course.
Yeah, I love it.
Well, I mean, he's got a flair for the dramatic, but...
the Century Initiative. That's what he calls it. The Century aims to increase Canada's population 100 million by 2030. 2100. Its official mission statement reads, growing our population 100 million by 2100 would reduce the burden on government services to fund healthcare, old age security, and other services. So...
And that's annoying because it's like, oh, if we get more people, we can tax them and then our services will be taken care of.
Right.
It's like, or we could invest in energy and food production and things that the world needs and also pay for our healthcare.
Like, provide value.
Yeah.
Imagine on the world stage and provide something people want.
Yeah.
Amazing how money will come in. But
it kind of speaks to like the whole idea of like Canada's economy being propped up by housing, because you think about the amount of money that would generate in the construction and housing sector, because they're like, okay, if we have to house this many, you know, almost 60 million more people, that's going to be a huge boon to that sector. So it kind of follows along the path that we're going right now, and I think that path is not a good one. So.
Yeah, you bring up a good point in terms of the argument of bringing in more immigrants, bringing in more people into the country means that we'll have more of a tax pool that then, as you said, then things will be fixed. Can't fix them as they are now. We have to have more people paying to the government in order for us to really fix things. And that is a bit of a struggle, you said, because not only, sure, more people means more money, but it also means more people.
Yeah.
They have to take care of.
That's the lazy way to do it. The hard way to do it is to cut services that people enjoy and that people have come to enjoy and really scale back on spending and put that money into like hard investments into energy and into agriculture. Like everybody needs energy to work, to do all the things that they need to do, to power their homes, and everybody needs to eat. It's like the two basic fundamental things that this country can do. And so it's like, there's our key to wealth. It's not bringing in more people and then hoping that they'll provide taxes. Like I said, it's very lazy and it's very, I'd say short-sighted. Like you have to build long-term solutions in there, and they're just not doing that because, again, what happens is like they spend the money up front. Everybody gets mad because you cut services to pay for these upfront investments. The next government comes in, they get to reap the benefits of something that's already built. And then everybody's like, oh, that government was crap. Like, think about how hard those years were. And it was like, well, it was that hard year that provided the benefit that this new government that comes in will then reap. And they know that, so they don't do it.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, it kind of brings back to the point I made last week where I have an issue, as you said, with the laziness of government, where, you know, it feels like every party has their thing, right? So conservatives, their whole mantra is, we'll, you know, make sure we tighten things up, cut
Small
things where we need to
government.
cut.
Yeah.
Exactly. We'll make sure, you know, we minimize how much tax we bring in, and we'll be effective with what we bring in to make sure we maximize our dollar. Liberals tend more to be like, all right, we have this amount coming in, but we have a lot of debt we got to take care of. Let's figure out ways that we can also find taxing people to fund the excess debt that we have, and then keep printing more money to increase that debt, and so on and so forth. NDP are that, but to another level, where they really care about social programs, and they'll keep investing in social programs in the same way.
Yeah.
To keep that wheel going.
Yeah, the way I understood it was like NDP is kind of like their ideology is like invest in the person and you'll get the return.
Yeah.
Like conservatives are all about being fiscally conservative. I don't even really know what the liberal policy is. It's like, you know what I mean? They're kind of like, we're going to do both. It's like, that never happens. You guys.
What I found with them in general, at least recently, I don't know, I'm not saying this has always been the case, but what I found is their slogan is, we're not blue.
Yeah.
You know, we're not those guys.
Yeah.
So, which, I mean, that can only go so far.
Yeah. They define themselves by, you know, what they're not. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, then the other part of it too is all the virtue signaling where they're like, and we're going to wake up. Then when Trudeau said that, I was like, barf, like, give me a break. Here's more performative action. Like, and it's funny because I had this conversation with a friend of mine after hockey last night, and he was just like, I'm just afraid that, like, if we don't have Trudeau in there, that, like, if we get Poilievre in, that, you know, that basically the social fabric of Canada is going to come undone. Like, you know, suddenly, like, people are going to be thrown in jail for being gay, and then, like, you know, people are not going to have access to abortion, and all these, like, weirdly, you know, I'm gonna say, like, they're like buzz topics right now because they're big in the States, that, like, people are like, oh my God, this is gonna happen here. And it's like, well, those have kind of been protected in the, like, Charter of Rights and Freedom that has been in place for years, you know. So I don't think that's gonna happen. But that fear has been kind of stoked by the CBC constantly. And we were laughing, we were talking about that last night. We were talking about how they the whole Twitter battle with Elon and CBC. And it's just really interesting when you follow the path and you're like, okay, so we're being fed this narrative by a news outlet that's funded by a government that wants to stay in power. It's like, how valid are those arguments then? And then when you start digging into interviews and things like that, and you're like, okay, I might not be a Poilievre fanboy because, like, he said some inflammatory things. And I'm just like, not my favorite. But then when you actually listen to him talk again, and he's like, no, I actually don't want to, like, you know, claw back gay marriage or claw back, like, abortion rights and things like this. He's like, that's not what I'm about. I just want to build homes for Canadians. And you're like, I don't know how much that's true, that second part, but, like, you know, well, we'll give you a chance, kind of thing. But yeah, people are scared, and it's that fear that I'm worried will drive people to make decisions at the polls that will not be in their best interest. And I think that's the sinister side of it. It's like when you've got people actually acting against their own best interest because of their being afraid. Mm-hmm. And it was like, and that's something this government does well. So,
yeah, fear in politics has been a big theme over the past 7-8 years. You know, the Harper government in the 2015 election really did their best to, like, they used fear to a degree, But it was more of the fear of the unknown is what they used.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, I don't know about this guy. Do you really want him? But
Yeah.
But it wasn't like, you know.
He's not ready.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and like, obviously that was their choice of politics, but it wasn't like, I didn't find it wicked divisive.
No.
Whereas now it's like, we've gotten to the point in politics where things have gotten so inflammatory that we're just like assassinating characters left, right.
Oh,
center.
yeah.
It's crazy. You only saw that in like the States back in the day. Now it's here.
Yeah. Well, again, another person from the hockey team, he was like, I don't think that, you know, children should be exposed to drag queens until they're adults, and then they can go to a drag show and do whatever they want because they're an adult. And he's like, but if I make that statement anywhere near, he's like, anybody else, he's like, suddenly I'm an evil person who hates children, who hates gay people, and he's like, none of that is true. He's like, but I just like, this is how I think that children should be raised. And I'm like, that's totally cool. You're entitled to that. He's like, but we're not allowed to disagree anymore. He's like, because, you know, a disagreement is now like a label of your moral character, that like you're either accepting everything or nothing. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that's not how people work.
Yeah. Well, you bring up something where I was kind of bummed to not be in the province for this weekend, was all the stuff that happened up in Kentville, I think over Saturday, Sunday, with the drag show that was taking place there, and it was getting protested by the opposite side of the aisle on it. And, you know, I followed it to a degree of like what was happening.
Yeah.
But I've obviously been busy all weekend, so I haven't actually followed up with what's happened. Have you either of you heard anything that's happened since? Was there anything explosive that happened? Did it run without a hitch? Was there a huge, you know, debacle there? What happened? Either, you know.
Most of what I saw was from, because I know people that do drag and are within that community, and most of what I saw was on their side before it happening. I haven't really seen anything over this weekend, but it was a more of like, hey, we need people to volunteer to come to this event. We need people here to essentially protect the drag performers. And I'm like, now we're creating
Counter protests.
And it's just like, this is more people around. This is not going to fix it. Like,
yeah,
just, we're not going to create, this side is again for this side's against this. Is like, that's not solving the issue here. And I was like, this is something where I'm like, I support my friends and what they do, but like, this is not something I'm going to step a foot into, because it's just, either side I pick on, it's just going to be, you know, I'm with them, I'm against them. And I'm like, I'm not picking sides here. This is just stupid. And why can't we just get along and someone just tell these kids a story? Because that's all they're there for.
No side is still a side. that's the comment you get, right? And so, and it's like, I get it to a degree, but it's just like, not everything has to be, you know, a red versus blue, a black versus white. Like, it's just like, there's shades in there. And it's funny because like one of the ones that I heard, there was actually like 50 people apparently picketing a high school in New Glasgow, on I think it was the Trans Day of Visibility or whatever it was. And it was like, they had their signs out. It was like anti-LGBTQ plus, anti-trans, anti-everything. And they were just like, they were actually picketing the school to the point that the cops had to get called, because we have that rule in Nova Scotia where you can't picket hospitals and schools. And so they actually like cleared them out because people were trying to get into the school. And they're like, that's exactly what we need. A bunch of angry like adults into a school full of children. Cause like, that's ideal.
That'll
right?
help.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, the other part of it too, is I'm like, how is that starting a dialogue? How is that creating a conversation? How is that like bringing anybody to see your point of view? Even if you like, let's say you are a person who's like anti-LGBTQ plus, and you want to have your point known. How is running into a school and like scaring people, like that's not going to win any friends or any, you know, people over to your side. It's like something my parents always said was like, you know, you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. And I just think that people like, and maybe the other side of it too is just like, I don't know if you're like at that point where you're just so filled with hate that you're just like lose your mind and, and kind of get in that state of rage or what. But like, yeah, I often wonder, I'm like, what do you want to accomplish? Like, that's the part that I'm curious about. But again, going back to our point that led into this, it's like, I find that you can't even ask that question of people, because even asking somebody on the other side, you know, what is it that you're trying to accomplish? What is your goal? What is it, your values? Suddenly that's collusion, and that's, you know, you're just as bad and you're supporting something that you're not supporting. And it's just like, give me a freaking break.
Yeah, it was. I was having a conversation around all this weekend as well with a friend of mine, and again, it was just it was a normal conversation, just kind of batting back forth ideas on like different political issues. But the one thing I just like was just trying to like, you know, obviously the friend didn't really fully understand or even so much as even see the other side of like what was happening with like these protests and stuff of like the drag shows and whatever. And I was like, from what I've heard, you know, and what I've understood talking to people, it's like their perspective is like they were fine, just like people living their lives. It was when they felt like they were coming after their children is when people started speaking out. And the person I was talking to like couldn't even hear that side of it and was just like, I just can't possibly be a conduit for people of hatred. And I was like, I mean, I'm sure. I mean, the extremists get the airtime. Don't get me wrong. But there's legitimate people who have legitimate concerns. You know, so come together and have a discussion.
Yeah, and the other part is that people should have the ability to parent their child how they want to parent. Like that's what it comes down to. It's like whether you agree or disagree, like there's a certain level of autonomy as a parent that you should be able to exercise. I'm not saying you teach your kid to hate, but at the same time, if you want to parent in a certain way, then you should have the freedom to do that. And I think that something like the drag story time thing, it's like I'm curious as to like what they're trying to accomplish there too. It's like I'm just, you know, like I consider like drag shows to be something that's like adult entertainment, right? It's a performance. And so like any other performance, you have to be a certain age to get in and you know, I just don't understand. And it'd be interesting to hear from somebody who does that, like what it is that they want to accomplish.
Yeah. From the videos I've watched, people I've talked to on it, the big thing they want to accomplish, and this is where the debate and the heated debate comes in, was they just want to know, they want to give kids an option that, you know, if this is how they identify, that they can do so in this way.
Right.
You know, from the drag side of it, from what I've heard, I could be mistaken, is they mainly just, they wanted to show off their costumes. You know, they don't want to like, you know, change anyone's mind, or like they just want to expose kids to this who may find this stuff interesting.
Right.
You know, and don't feel vilified. And that's the argument, right? And this is my counter argument to that is, I understand that, and I'm sure there's people in that group that definitely believe that. But the problem that the other side's having with it, and I mean like essentially the right-leaning side on it, is there's people who are, you know, have sinister intentions, who are kind of like using that movement as undercover to like get close to children, and they realize that they can be allowed to in some ways.
I know, but
that's where people are coming from.
Yeah, and I get that. I don't know. I don't know if I like subscribe to that personally, just because I'm like, if you're a sinister person who wants to get close to kids, I mean, just become a hockey coach. I mean, like there's so many ways.
Good point.
So it's like, and we're not out there like vilifying every, you know, sports coach out there, even though that's the primary way where a lot of like abuse happens. Right. But yeah, I get the idea of like wanting exposure to that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I'm like, man, when that kid becomes a teenager, they're going to look that stuff up anyway. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's
like,
and that's like, yeah. But now I've stayed both sides of it. Now I'll kind of express where I come on it, and it's more of like we're exposing them to so much. Like we already do so much. Like the internet exposes people so much as it is. Like we are way over stimulated in general as humans, and so to keep like exposing kids to all the things at such a young age I don't think is helpful. I don't think it's helpful in their development. I think, you know, let's keep it to the basics and then let them grow into these things and learn about them.
That's kind of where I'm at with it too. It's like, I have no problem with somebody wanting to be a drag queen. But I'm just like, you know what? I'm totally with that on that same point of like, let's let people find their way when they're meant to find their way and stop trying to like force ideologies on people. Like one of the things that I actually read from Johns Hopkins University, was a kind of like a discussion on like trans issues. And they said that when you're a child, that your sexuality, your gender expression, like everything is fluid because you're modeling adults, you're modeling like your mom and your dad, and that over time, eventually you find your way, right? That's the natural progression of like developing a personality. But they said that like right now with a lot of like parents being so hyper vigilant on trans issues, like they'll see like a little boy put on his mom's like high heels and be like, oh my God, my son is identifying as a woman right now. It's like, no, he's trying on different like identities that he's seeing. And that's a perfectly normal part of development. Like, and doesn't mean that they're going to be trans or anything like that. And that they've actually like cautioned parents against like being hyper vigilant on these things and just being like, let them just be as they are and explore, and they're going to find their way in this world. And if they grow up and they want to be, you know, if they find that they're trans when they're older, then like support them or whatever. But like stop trying to like force this stuff on kids because of what you've read on social media and then you see one thing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I mean, obviously I've been seeing some stats. Obviously there's been an increase in people who identify as part of the LGBT plus community. And I'm curious if that is, that stat is influenced by like people being able to just find their way and do their thing and feeling more open to be themselves, or is that stat influenced by how pervasive it is currently in our culture of like, it's always in your face. So like, you know, I'm curious, like what's like, you know, what's the factor in that?
I kind of have an interesting take on it because like just some anecdotal experiences that I've had, where like you have on one hand where you have people who like, obviously they're born in that community. Like, I remember one of the guys I went to school with, like from elementary school up, like there was a photo and like, it's me, my friend Laura and him. And so I'm like thumbs up and she's like this. And then he's like that. And we're like, oh yeah, like it was there all along. And then there's other people that I know that, you know, over time, like didn't find their place in this world and then really found community in that community. And so I'm wondering if you're seeing more people being free to actually express themselves how they want to because they're not at, you know, risk of losing their life or something like that, like they have in decades past, or extreme abuse. But then the other side of it too is I think that where we've lost a lot of community in different forms, I wonder if people are like really latching onto this idea and you know, where like the idea too, where sexuality can be fluid, but they jump to it because they're like, this is a community I can be a part of.
That's a very, very fascinating theory. I could get on board with that. That makes like, I mean, you can say that about anything. Like,
Yeah.
You know, you can see why like any community is kind of performing that way.
Yeah, well, we're all hungry for purpose and we're all hungry for connection. Mm-hmm. And I'm also primed for this kind of conversation right now because I listened to like 5 podcasts in a row all about human connection and how we operate and how we procrastinate, and everything to do with how we operate is all based off of connection and how we are perceived by others that we want to be connected to. And so, and it just kind of like flows really well into these ideas of like, okay, I think people are identifying and really kind of like claiming things, and then also like being very rigid on beliefs and things like we were talking about earlier about things being black and white, because that creates a boundary and a clear division of us and them in our communities. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's what people are really hungry for, is like finding a place and finding their people.
Yeah, feeling accepted, people that get them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we still see it in that community, but then as well, you see it in politics too. I've seen friends that fall into that, where it's just like they feel like, and I'm sure many people who listen to the show feel this way too, where they just feel alone in what they believe.
Yeah.
They feel isolated. And then you kind of connect with other people online. You're just like, oh, we're not alone.
Yeah, yeah.
In some ways, are we experiencing gaslighting from our government? I don't know. Probably, you know, and you know, people are kind of experiencing that. Like, and so it's all over the map in these various communities and pockets that are experiencing the same thing, but it's being expressed in different ways. And as you said, they create the lines in the sand, and tribalism continues.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And it's very interesting too, because like, I find that those like communities of themselves, like kind of keep everybody in line too, right? It's like I can have like a lot of very fiscally conservative values, but at the same time, listen to a lot of Brene Brown and be like, yeah, I'm 100% behind what she has to say. And people are just like, how can you be both?
Yeah. That's not allowed.
You're not allowed to do that.
Yeah.
And so I get a lot of that from like both sides, where like people that I identify with, like, you know, right leaning, that like think that I'm one of them. They're like, yeah, Reg. And then they like see that and they're like, what? And I play on a hockey team that is like 50% LGBTQ plus people. And people are like, what? And then on the other side, the left, people are like, how dare you like listen to Jordan Peterson or like watch Joe Rogan or something like that. They're like, that it's poisoning your mind. And I'm like, no, I'm just trying to get a balanced perspective on things, people. Come on.
I had a friend of mine. This was the first time I experienced hearing a story like this. This was last year. We were talking, and she's telling me about, you know, her and her boyfriend, and then she found out her boyfriend was a Joe Rogan fan, listened to the Joe Rogan podcast. And he also listened to Andrew Scholes, I believe, was the other one. And then the Spit and Chicklets podcast with Paul Bizinet and Whitney. And she's like, you either stop listening to them or we can't be together.
Oh my God.
I was like, and I was like, how did that conversation go? She's like, oh yeah, he stopped. And I was like, okay, fair enough.
It's like the podcast is great, but you know, physical intimacy like kind of wins.
True, but I just like, I know there's plenty of relationships out there that they make their lines in the sand, and they make their lines maybe not the most informed way.
I know
either.
Yeah,
it's like they heard, I don't even know what, like they'll throw something about Joe Rogan out there, and I'm like, he's probably the most well-rounded podcaster in the world. Like he has on so many different types of perspectives and points of view. I don't get where and he's an admitted liberal.
But because the problem is that if you have anybody who disagrees with whatever your narrative is, so if you're very right-wing and you have somebody who's liberal on there, immediately you're canceled. You're not in the group anymore. Same with the left, where if you're left-wing and you have a right-wing person on there and you're not tearing them down and going to teach them something, like, you know what I mean? Like, then immediately you're complicit and you're a part of the problem and your silence is violence. And like, you know what I mean? All these things. And it's like, no, come on. But it's just funny. Like that relationship thing, like made me think of like, so young Reg, when I grew up in the church, and then I'm an atheist now. And so I like went through that transition of like leaving the church, like, kind of like saying, no, I don't believe any of this anymore. And my girlfriend at the time was like still in the church, and she's like, we can't have a relationship where it's unevenly yoked. And I was like, we're not oxen, come on. Like, so she broke up with me. She was like, nope, you're not a Christian anymore, so we can't be together. And I was like, damn it. I was like, I was heartbroken. I was like,
of course, yeah.
I was like, this is the one, like, we're going to be together. Like, I was like 12, you know what I mean? I was like, this is going to be great. And so then now I saw her on Facebook recently, and she draws her own eyebrows on. So I'm like, okay, maybe a dodge bullet.
Gee. Oh, wow. That's quite the story, man.
Yeah, I know.
Well, it brings me back. I'll finish off with this. I'm surprised we didn't start off with this. But all the stuff that happened with the Rachel Gilmore stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Cracked me up. I was laughing so hard, dude. I couldn't believe what was going on with that.
Well, then when I pointed out that she took your line and threw it in there, I was like, no way she didn't. Like,
no way. When you pointed that out, I was like, I thought you're punking me. I was like, there's no way. Apparently she hates us so much, but she's going to take our stuff and put in her bio. Okay, sounds good, dude.
But like what I found crazy was the comments where people were like, here's these guys like trying to compliment this journalist. Obviously the sexual tension is like, I was like, what?
Yeah, obviously I'm in love with her.
Yeah, it's like you can't compliment somebody without it being sexual now. It's like you're gross.
Yeah.
Like, stop.
Seriously. It was so weird. And like the person who brought that comment up was like professed or claimed, I should say, to be one of her good friends. And I'm like, I mean, sure, whatever. But like she then followed up that comment with like, I don't understand why all of you are so obsessed with her. I was like, first off, I don't know what you mean by all. It was just three of us on a show talking. We've had produced over 200 hours worth of content on this show. We've talked about her 3 different times for a complete 8 minutes. And the first time was a talk about when she was, there's misinformation being spread about her online. We called that out, said it was wrong. We called out the threats that she was getting from people, said that was wrong. And third, we complimented her for, making a name for herself.
Yeah.
We just happened to mention there that we also just don't fully agree with her politics. But like that was offensive. Like that was so interesting.
It's what I said before. You have to be 100% drinking the Kool-Aid. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you're either with us or against us.
Yeah.
You can't recognize somebody who is a leader in their field or a lightning rod in Canadian media, as you said, without suddenly now it just being like,
yeah,
it's so interesting.
Yeah, like I was really obviously we tagged her on TikTok, which again. Like she gets tagged in all the things. So I really wasn't expecting anything to happen.
Yeah.
And then to see it just pop up on my Twitter feed one day, I was like, hey, that's me. Wait, that's not me posting it. What? Who is what? And I realized it was her laughing about it. I was like, fair enough. We got that, I guess. And then to see like people like Taylor Lorenz retweet it, was like shocked. Who's like, he's a left-leaning journalist down in the States with like 350,000 followers. And so just like, many different journalists were like retweeting and like talking about us. I was like, this is crazy. I can't believe this is happening right now. But
you're like, exposure.
We'll take it, baby. We'll take it. So it was like a few days where I was like, I just didn't know what to do with it. I was like, this is just hilarious. I can't believe this is happening.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
There you go. Start complimenting journalists on TikTok. You'll get all of the views.
Apparently.
But like they'll still not like it.
Yeah, they'll still hate you for it. Well, I mean, we offered her to come on. I doubt she'll take it up, but because that won't look good, as you said, that won't look good to her followers and the crew that she's amassed on Twitter and the people that she placates to. But I still believe it would be an interesting interview.
It would be a really interesting conversation, honestly.
Yeah.
But I love hearing how people think.
Yeah, exactly. So invites open.
Yeah.
Be a good show.
But now we have to get to the depressing news.
Yeah, let's just get this over with. Apparently, we're not going to title the show with this anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, so interest rates are looking to possibly go up here in June.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do? Well, I'm in this scenario. I'm on a variable rate mortgage myself, and I can maybe take 2 more increases, and then like I myself would probably start to happen a little bit.
Yeah.
And so now I'm in the scenario. What do I do? Done the math. It's going to cost me about $5,000 to break my current mortgage, and I will make that back and then some with a new mortgage rate over the course of 13 months.
Right.
So I have to pray that nothing drops over the next year and a half for it to make sense for me. Which the way things are going, it seems like they will go that way. If they are like debating on an increase, and the reason why they're debating the increase is because there was a slight uptick in inflation this past quarter.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm thinking right now.
Didn't the states recently increase too?
I think they just recently held.
Did they held? Okay.
They held. But they will be increasing again though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm just thinking like, yeah, it's mortgages, it's people with like large lines of credit.
Yeah.
Because I was looking at it and like, one of the stipulations for us buying our house and getting our mortgage was that we had to have our line of credit paid off. Mm-hmm. And I just really hadn't thought of much about it because it's a $50,000 line of credit and we had like $200 on it or something stupid. And then when I looked at it, I was like, this is at like 9% like interest. Like this is nuts. Mm-hmm. And like, I'm just thinking like if people are up against it and they're using their lines of credit to help like pay for everyday things like groceries and, just living expenses, like the ridiculous rents that people are paying. Cause I know a couple of people in that situation where one of their partners lost their job or are in school or doing something to try and like better their life, but can't work, they're screwed. And they're using credit to try and make up the difference. And so every interest rate hike is just, it's devastating.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, it's a savage thing to say, but it's the reality of the game. Is the goal of the Bank of Canada is they will keep jacking up interest rates until they quell inflation. What's one of the key signs of quelling inflation is the unemployment rate still spikes, and I think that's essentially they're going to increase until people start losing their jobs, and for it to start making sense on paper.
Yeah,
so it's going to get ugly.
It is going to be ugly, and then you have to think like, how is that better? You know what I mean? Like, I know runaway inflation is not great, but how is it better to have people out of work, people not able to afford the essentials, like people like, because you're hurting a certain part of the population, and that's the lower half of the middle class and below.
Yeah,
like, you know what I mean? Like the upper class and upper middle class are going to be okay. Like the upper middle class might feel it a lot more, but it's that middle part of the middle class and below that are really, really going to suffer. And that's most of Canada.
Yeah.
No wonder people don't want to come here.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. People caught on. That's why that when we start off with that stat, I found that really interesting. I find that the potential immigrants are starting to catch on that Canada's not all it's cracked up to be. And there's a big departure that's happening too amongst immigrants. They're leaving as well. So,
yeah, I'm watching that happen in my friend group right now. I've got a friend. She's from mainland China and married a Nova Scotian, and they're both looking at like actually going back to China.
No way.
And I'm like, guys, like it seems a little risky right now, where like China and the United States are kind of like at each other a little bit,
hedging their bets, baby.
Yeah, and they're like, it just doesn't make sense. They're like, we can make so much more going back over there with the educations that we have from here.
Wow.
That like it doesn't make sense. We can sell our house here for a mint and go over there and like basically have servants that they can hire.
Wow.
And I'm like, that's nuts.
Yeah, and it's like that in a lot of places too.
Yeah.
You know, obviously it's, you know, America's seen like their issues as well. But, you know, even the time I spent down there over the weekend, it's like their groceries are still cheaper down there than it are up here, you know? And it's just that exchange rate was a little killer this weekend.
Yeah. But don't talk about milk, though.
True. Yeah. So that's what we're thinking in terms of the interest rates. We're seeing another spike, so be prepared. If you're in a scenario where it's like, I don't know if I can take one more, you're on a variable rate, do the math for yourself and your situation. See what makes sense. I had to do that for myself, and I'll probably be executing on that here in the next 2-3 weeks.
Yeah, and be mindful of what big purchases are coming in your life. Like, you know, I know that the Taylor Swift tickets are enticing, but if that's gonna, you know, be a make or break for you, like, you know, it's those hard decisions, and I think that's what's gonna happen is you're just gonna see people like, I mean, I don't eat out as much anymore because it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so it's just like things like that you're just going to start to see like start to dwindle away. And I think one of the biggest things like through these like difficult times is, again, that idea of community is like just starting to like put the call out to your friends and stuff and being like, you know, we can do things other than going out to eat, going out for drinks, like just hanging out, making sure that you're there for each other, supporting each other, because people are going to be feeling a lot of stress. They're going to be feeling a lot of anxiety about like what's coming. So it's, you need to rely on your people. You need to rely on your community, because that's what's going to get you through some of these situations.
Totally. You know, and do the old rural Canada thing, man. Just go for a drive in the country for a bit, hang out, you know, have a drink.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that was a good show, y'all. It was a pleasure. So whatever it is you're doing, whether you be trying to figure out who you're going to vote for,
escaping your anxieties on a beach,
or going to a drag show.
Oh, whatever it is you're doing, and wherever you are, we love you. We're out. Peace.